I want to ask you about the purpose of producing the annual Antisemitism Report. Could you describe the purpose in issuing it?
Well, the purpose is to provide documentation of anti-Semitism within Australia within a 12-month period, and so that's been ongoing since 1990. It allows politicians, the Jewish community, lawmakers, human rights groups, other people to see the anti-Semitism within the country, or the anti-Semitism that has been reported, so whether it's incidents or discourse. And then by having that documentation, it means then that gives people who are in positions of influence or power to be able to use that as a resource for policies or laws or whatever, wherever it may be useful or needed.
Thank you. And you've referred to both incidents and discourse. Could you explain what you mean by those two different concepts?
Incidents, generally I say incidents are what are done to Jews, and discourse is what is said about Jews. But I mean, that's kind of a general thing. So often incidents will be things that are occurring on the streets. So let's say verbal abuse, physical assault, vandalism, graffiti, those types of things, whereas discourse will generally be what perhaps is written up in a newspaper or what you see on TV or online, those kinds of things.
In 2024 and 2025, you issued a report covering incidents only.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
Because of the massive amount of anti-Semitism incidents and discourse that occurred after the 7th of October 2023 attack in Israel, so there was just so much there. I didn't have time to kind of do the incidents and the discourse, so I decided that we needed to have the data out there, and so I decided just to do a incident-only report. So I focus on numbering and collecting all the incidents, doing the tables and the stats for that, and then I included a sample of incidents, and did that both for the 2024 incident report and the 2025 incident report.
But then in 2024 you followed it up with a more fulsome report.
Yes.
Dealing with both incidents and discourse, correct?
Yes, so I still did the normal report, which has incidents and normally the full list of incidents, and most of the chapters on discourse. So the normal report was followed up. It was about a year late because it took so much to write, too long to write, and so that one has been released, the 2024 full report. The 2025 full report is still a long way off from I have no idea when that's going to be completed. There's just still so much, so many incidents and so much other discourse as well to add in and make a report out of it.
I understand. I want to ask you now about your process for preparing the reports, and first of all, how you go about collecting the data that's contained therein. You collect the data in your report from multiple different sources, correct?
Yes.
And could you describe those sources for us?
Generally, so it depends whether you're talking about incidents or discourse. So, for example, incidents will come, roughly about 40 to 50% of incidents will come from the CSGs. There are 4 CSGs, community security groups in Australia. They collect all the incidents and they send them to me each October, so then those incidents can go into the report. Also get state Jewish representative bodies such as the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies. They collect incidents, people report to them, and then they send those incidents on to me, normally as they occur, and so does the Queensland Jewish Board of Deputies. Often send them on as they occur. The South Australian Jewish Body, it has a website, a portal, which I have access to, so I can access their incidents as they come. The other states tend to probably direct their incidents to the CSG. But basically all incidents will end up with me from the CSGs, from the state bodies. And often many incidents I will come across in the media. So for example, the incident down at the netball courts in Maroubra. So I first saw that on Facebook, and then later on it's in the media that this incident occurred, and then police have put out that they've arrested the woman. So there's an incident that, you know, no one actually reported to me, but I, you know, see it.
So do you try to monitor the media yourself to pick up
I do,
incidents?
yes, because it's important to be able to collect as many incidents as are occurring.
Do you do that on a daily basis? Or?
On a daily basis, yes. So generally each morning I'll look at, I have a program so that I'm actually able to access articles that have certain keywords in them. But also often, let's say if you're on social media, people post a lot of articles from the media, you know, so and I'll have my social media set up so that I follow particular people and I know they're posting articles, and so then I can follow that up. So no, that's a major source of not only just incidents but also discourse of things that are happening in the arts sector or in schools and universities and the workplaces. So
and does the ECAJ also from time to time receive direct reports from individuals who are affected by incidents?
Yes, so I will, before we set up the reporting hub, so people, and even now, they still do either report directly to Peter Wertheim, the CEO, because he has the info at ECAJ address. Other times people will report directly to me because my email address is out there for people to report to. So anything that comes to Peter, he sends straight on to me, and so we get quite a few reports like that. And then we have the reporting hub, which is only kind of got going last year, and my assistant takes care of that, and so when there's incidents on that, she sends them to me and I document them.
The reporting hub, is that something that's available online on ECAJ's website?
Yeah, so the Antisemitism Reporting Hub is on the ECAJ website, on the front page, home page, so that people can report, and it'll have a drop-down boxes, you know, the type of incident you're reporting and when it happened and where and any other information, and their contact details. So if we need to contact them, we can email them or phone them or whatever.
And that hub that was set up in 2024 but was not operational until 2025, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Do you personally review all the data that you receive before it goes into the report?
Oh, the Antisemitism Report?
Yes.
Oh yes, that's me, yes. So everything that goes in there, because I've basically collected it all and write it all, so everything that's in the Antisemitism Report is,
something that you personally have reviewed?
Yes.
And I now want to ask you about how you go about determining whether a reported event is anti-Semitic or not, and you deal with this in your statement from paragraph 38. Is it you who decides whether a reported event is anti-Semitic or not?
Yes, it's me. So
and you personally review all the reported events to make that determination, correct?
Yes.
And in making that determination, what definition of anti-Semitism do you apply?
Well, I mean, we do use the IRA definition as a guide. Its examples provide, some good guidance on distinguishing between something that's anti-Semitic and not anti-Semitic. There's also the National Inquiry into Racist Violence from 1991, which has certain examples of types of things that are racist, of violence. So there is that also as a background. So and because I've had all the reports from Jeremy Jones, who was the previous author of the reports before me, so I know the types of incidents that were happening, of what's anti-Semitic or not.
And can I ask you this, do you treat all criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic or not?
No, probably most criticism of Israel, even though a lot of it is incredibly offensive, we don't treat as anti-Semitic. So I have very strict guidelines to determine when something that's anti-Israel is anti-Semitic. So, for example, if it uses older anti-Jewish tropes, such as the blood libel, or Jews are satanic, they might say Israel's satanic. So then that kind of feeds into that. If they use Nazi analogies, such as Israel is now the new Nazi Germany, and acting like, the Nazis treated the Jews. So a lot of that, or if they're saying that Israel, as the state of the Jewish people, should be destroyed. So I consider that anti-Semitic. So it's fairly strict guidelines, and it's fairly simple in most cases to decide. I mean, there are other things, such as, for example, Israel, the accusation that Israel is committing genocide. Now, that may be in graffiti, online, in posters and placards or wherever. So even though that in itself is a lie, because Israel is not committing genocide, I don't actually count that as anti-Semitic. I mean, I'm not looking at what's in their hearts for why they would say that. I'm just looking at what the actual wording is and the context of that wording.
And do you adopt the same approach for what might be described as pro-Palestinian material? That is, you don't count it as anti-Semitic unless it includes those anti-Jewish themes that you outlined.
No, we don't count anything pro-Palestinian as anti-Jewish unless, for example, if there's a Free Palestine sticker and it's stuck on a synagogue or outside a Jewish school. So those, if they're using pro-Palestine material to target Jews, that in itself then becomes anti-Semitic. So then those particular stickers will be anti-Semitic because of where they've been placed, or the graffiti, or the... So we're very, we have these guidelines, very careful to stick with them.
And does the same apply to anti-Israel material? That is, you might have anti-Israel material that does not in itself contain anti-Jewish sentiment, but the context in which that material is deployed might indicate that it's anti-Semitic. Is that your approach?
Yeah, and context is important. So, you can have... I mean, look, Israel is a state like any other state, and just as we in Australia are free to criticise our government, our country, and everyone should have the right to criticise any government or any country in the world, and so we accept that. And even though people may lie about things or may use offensive language, so we accept that as being, political discourse or political language. It's only when it crosses the line into anti-Semitism that's when we will count it as anti-Semitic.
You say at paragraph 41 of your statement that when anti-Israel or pro-Palestinian material is not inherently anti-Jewish, but is used to target individual Jews, Jewish venues or Jewish residential areas, you characterise those as anti-Semitic because it's being used to target Jews rather than engage in a critique of Israeli politics. Is that the approach you've just been describing?
Yes, that's what I've just been explaining, yes.
Right. So can I take you just to a couple of examples, and you have given some already. Going back to the examples in paragraph 40 of your statement, this is where you give some examples of material that is might be described as anti-Israel, but has been included in the Antisemitism Report 2024. And I don't propose to read out the names or handles of those who've posted this information, but can I just ask you about subparagraph E of paragraph 40. So there, I might just read that out. It says, I wholeheartedly support the Palestinian cause. Israel is no better than the Nazis of World War II. I've seen pictures of what they're doing that compare with what they went through. could you just describe why you've included that as an example of anti-Semitic material?
Because that's Nazi analogy. So when Israel is compared to the Nazis, and we know the Nazis planned a genocide of the Jewish people, and they, in that process, they murdered 6 million Jews, rounded them up, murdered them. So and Israel, even when there's war, and Israel has been involved in several military conflicts over the last 78 years, there's nothing that has occurred that is like what the Nazis have done to the Jews. So, and that's what I said. So one of the things, if there's a Nazi analogy of Israel to the Nazis, then that's anti-Semitic, because it is not only is it incorrect, but it's also offensive. And I mean, if you look at it, so no other country in the world is compared to Nazi Germany, only Israel. And so in a way, it's, they're saying it because they know that will also hurt Jews, that we're incredibly offended by that.
Could I also ask you about paragraph G, and again, without any need to identify the poster, but it says, Australia is seeing firsthand the influence of the Jewish lobby on our politicians and the media. Our vote together is stronger than Zionist money. From some people's perspective, that might be characterised as simply anti-Israel, but why have you decided to include it in the Antisemitism Report?
Well, the first part of that is you can criticise the Jewish lobby, and often the Jewish community, out of all the ethnic communities in Australia, is often referred to as lobby. But the main part is the second one, talking about Zionist money. And so it goes back to the stereotype of Jews and money, and Jews using money to influence or to have power, to influence governments to do things, and influence politicians and media. So this one at G is very much more on the older stereotypes of Jews, of still current stereotypes of Jews and money, but just sort of a much older one. So it's not even really talking about the fact that they've got Jewish in the first sentence, but then Zionist in the second, shows also that there is an overlap between the two of them, how these people see them.
And can I ask you about some of the examples in paragraph 42?
Mm-hmm.
So these are examples of stickers or posters, and in particular paragraph F, you've identified in the Antisemitism Report 2024 an instance of stickers of Free Palestine being stuck onto 2 soccer balls which were kicked over the fence into the property of a Jewish community facility. Why have you chosen to include that one as anti-Semitic?
Well, firstly, stickers of Free Palestine are not anti-Semitic, and people are free to put those stickers up anywhere they like. However, by putting them onto soccer balls and then kicking the balls over into a Jewish facility, they are targeting the Jewish community of that, and so that's why that's anti-Semitic, by targeting Jews for something to do with what's happening overseas.
And so I take it if you were to witness a banner saying Free Palestine held up outside Parliament House, you would not regard that
as anti-Semitic. No.
And then could I ask you about paragraph J, stickers of anti-Israel types placed on 3 Jewish community venues, including the Holocaust Museum in Melbourne. Why did you include that as anti-Semitic?
Here again, it's because you can have anti-Israel stickers, and that's fine. I mean, depending what they say, but just normal anti-Israel stickers. But the fact that they have been placed on Jewish community venues means that they are targeting Jews with anti-Israel material. So the very fact of targeting Jews, if those stickers were put elsewhere, not on a Jewish venue or near a Jewish school or something, that's not a problem. The fact that they have been placed on Jewish venues, so that is why they are counted as incidents, and why they occur in the Antisemitism Report as incidents.
In paragraph 43, you describe what you do if you're in doubt about whether an incident is anti-Semitic or not. Could you just describe for us now what you do in that scenario?
Sometimes when I receive incidents or I find incidents, I don't have enough information about the details that I might require. Other times we may have enough information, such as example in 43, but we don't know the motivation. So for example in this 43, so there was a famous case of a brother and sister in Melbourne, ultra-Orthodox Jews, dressed in appropriate clothing, waiting outside the gate of their home. A man came past, walked back, stabbed the woman in the neck, beat the guy in the head. They were taken to hospital. Now the perpetrator said nothing at all. So we don't know his motivation. And then so I'm trying to find out, is this motivated by anti-Semitism? Is this just an incident or is it anti-Semitic? Because just because Jews have been physically assaulted does not mean that it's anti-Semitic. So you've got to look at the motivation. So by the time that I did the 2018 report, I still had no further knowledge because the perpetrator was not caught. So we didn't include it in the 2018 report. And I had been in contact with CSG in Victoria to find out, and they said, look, we still don't know, police don't know. As it turned out, within the following year, New South Wales Victoria Police had arrested the guy, found out that yes, it was anti-Semitically motivated. So then, so that we don't lose that incident, I have a section in the Antisemitism Report in Chapter 2 Incidents that's called Incidents Omitted from the previous year's report. So it goes in there as a omitted incident to keep up documentation, but it is not counted in any incident tally. And quite a few of those, even incidents that might come in later after the report's been done, I will put them in the following year's report, but they're not counted in any tally.
I understand. There are 6 subcategories of incident that you adopt in the anti-Semitism reports, correct?
Yes, yes.
The first is physical assault.
Yes.
The second is vandalism. And does that include malicious damage to property such as cars, buildings and infrastructure?
Yes.
The next category is verbal abuse, harassment and intimidation,
yes.
Correct? But am I right in thinking you don't include mere discrimination on the basis of perceived Jewishness? It has to rise to what you call abuse, harassment or intimidation?
Yeah, I mean discrimination is a really hard one to determine, because in most cases of discrimination you don't know why you have been discriminated against. Very few people actually say, I'm not going to give you the job because you're Jews, because I don't like Jews. They're not going to say that. You just don't get the job and you don't know why, right? So no, discrimination doesn't really occur unless there has been something that will indicate, yes, there was, the discrimination was due to anti-Semitism. And then often a few of those I will go into the verbal abuse, because harassment, intimidation, it'll go into that category, because there's only the 6 categories, and so sometimes odd types of incidents need to be placed in somewhere.
Right. The next category is what you describe as hate messages, which can be via email, the post or telephone, correct?
Yes.
The next category is graffiti, is that right?
Yes.
And finally, materials such as banners, flags, leaflets, posters and stickers, is that right?
Yes, yes.
And then for each year you do a tally of those incidents,
yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And I'll come back to ask you about that tally in more detail shortly. As for what you describe as discourse, that covers, does it, public discourse in mainstream media and other media?
Yes, yes.
As print and online publications?
Yes, online, yes.
Discussions at public forums?
Yes, yes.
And also on social media?
Social media, yes, so they're all in discourse.
And the examples that you include in the discourse section of the report are not counted as part of the incident tally. Is that right?
No, they're two very separate things, incidents and discourse, so they're very separate.
I understand. At paragraph 54 of your statement, you say you don't generally count anti-Semitic posts or publications online as incidents. Could you just explain to us why you don't do that?
Well, if there are publications online or social media, social media has just grown over the last decades. You wouldn't be able to count the number of anti-Semitic or any types of social media postings or commentary because there are so many. So it's uncountable. It's like trying to count the stars. And even if you could count them, it would skew the numbers. If we counted them and put them into incidents, it would skew the numbers so that then the largest category for anti-Semitic incidents would be online comments. Now, what someone says online, it's like, it's not in the same category of being facing verbal abuse or seeing graffiti that someone has gone out and done something. I mean, so we don't count that.
But you do seek to cover it as part of the discourse.
We cover it in discourse, yes, because a lot of things nowadays are online, whether it's media articles or look, even Parliament's online. This is online. And so they all become part of discourse. So we try and capture all the anti-Semitism that there is in Australia. If it's not an incident, then it can go into the discourse section.
You do include two exceptions to this approach you've outlined from paragraph 58. Could you just talk us through those two exceptions?
Yes, so we do include basically two types of online items. So, for example, emails. We include emails as an incident because they're similar to if you're getting a letter in the letterbox, right? And then also direct messaging on social media. So something that someone has directly messaged that's private to a particular person, if that contains anti-Jewish hate, then that also is similar to an email. So we count those two online types of messaging as incidents.
And the second exception you've outlined is where an online post or publication contains a direct threat. Can you just explain that?
Yeah, so on the occasion when there may be a post or a comment online that is either generally calling for the killing of Jews or a direct death threat to a particular Jewish individual, then we will count that as an incident because of the seriousness of that. I mean, we don't get too many of those, or I don't have too many of those in the incident section, because here again it's either got to be reported to me or I've got to come across it.
Could I ask you then about the incident tally? And I want to do that by reference to the 2025 incident report, which is not an annexure to your statement, but you should have a copy there.
Yes, I do.
With you. And for the record, that's ECA.0001.0001.0010. And the incident tally, that should appear as a standalone document in front of you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Separate to the folder you have there. So on page 5 of that document, you have the incident tally. Can I just seek to understand that a little more? So first of all, you've got along the top row there the different 6 categories that you identified earlier, ranging from physical assault to posters and stickers. Is that right?
Yes.
And then you have the years going all the way back to 2013. For 2023, let's take the physical assault column as an example. There were 11 physical assaults that year. And then you have the numbers for each category, and the total at the end is 495, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then you compare that to 2024, physical assaults rise to 65, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. And then the total at the end across all 6 categories of incidents was 2,062, correct?
Correct, yes.
And that represents from 2023 to 2024 about a 316% increase, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And then if one looks at the 2025 row, you see 24 for physical assaults, correct?
Yes.
And then the total at the end across all 6 categories was 1,654, correct?
Yes.
And then the top row shows the percentage change between 2024 and 2025. Is that right?
Yes.
In other words, the negative 19.7% figure shows the percentage decrease from the 2,062 total to the 1,654 total.
Yes.
Okay. So could I just understand how this counting works? So say, for example, if a person throws eggs at an identifiably Jewish person, that would count as a physical assault,
Physical assault, yes.
And that counts as one incident
The
tally?
Yes.
But if, for example, a person threw eggs at 5 identifiably Jewish people, would you still count that as one incident?
If it occurs at the same time, yes, that's one incident.
All right.
Regardless of the number of people who have been egged.
Yes. And so can you explain why you adopt that approach, that is not accounting for the number of victims in a given incident?
So for example, it's just the way we've done it. So that's the actual incident. If, for example, that same person or someone else went 2 blocks up the street and egged different people at a different time, that's another incident. So for example, when the Bondi massacre occurred, and I wasn't quite sure because it was incredibly serious, so I contacted CSG. It's like, how are we counting this, and they said it's one incident. So 15 murders, 40 odd shooting injuries, it's one incident.
I understand. So looking at this table then, if you see the assaults went from 65 in 2024 to 24 in 2025, is it fair to say then that before drawing any conclusions as to the impact of anti-Semitic assaults in 2024 compared to 2025, it'd be important to understand the nature of the individual incidents that make up those totals?
Yes. So even just looking at the table here, so you can see by going across the numbers for each category of the incidents, sort of physical assault versus graffiti. But also within the actual report itself, not in this incident-only report, but in the full reports, basically all of the incidents are written up there. So people who are actually interested in having a look at anti-Semitic incidents in Australia and to understanding, what's actually happening. So all of the incidents are written, they might take about 2 or 3 lines, but it's all there, open to the public to see. and then the reader can gauge, what levels and what's happening.
Is it your intention that this tally should be read together with the description of the actual incidents included in the report?
If you want to know further, so it depends what you want to know, right? So, for example, journalists only want to know one number, or two numbers, sorry. They want to know the number, the final tally, and the percentage change, right? But then, let's say students of at university or other people who are interested in hate incidents, they will look much deeper into the types of the categories, how many graffiti there were in this particular 12-month period, and then they might look at the pages and pages, because I think the 2024 report had something like 100 pages of incidents, just to write them up in 2 or 3 lines. And then I also include another probably 50 odd pages of images of those incidents, the images that have the incidents that have images, such as graffiti in particular, placards. There's some types of incidents you don't get images, but images are very powerful because then you can actually see this is what it was.
I understand. And can I ask this, in terms of this incident tally, do you give any weighting to how serious the incident was?
No, we don't weight incidents at all, and I don't know of any other organisation in Australia or overseas that weight incidents. So basically every incident has a value of 1, and if you want to look at how serious, out of the 1654 incidents over the past 12 months, if you want to look at how serious those incidents are, then you'd need to look at the chart here, and then look at the actual report itself to read through the incidents.
And so, just by way of illustration, if you take vandalism, for example, if a perpetrator were to break a car window and there was evidence it was anti-Semitic, that's counted as 1 incident,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
But likewise, if a perpetrator firebombs a synagogue,
it's also
that's
one
also
incident.
counted as 1.
Yes,
I
yes.
understand.
I mean, there is no other way around it. It's what everyone uses, and it also means that if every incident has 1 value, then it's much easier to be looking at other reports of other types of incidents against other communities or in other countries.
I don't think any criticism of your methodology is implied by Ms. Hager's question. We're just seeking to understand.
Yes, no, I understand that. Yes.
Can I now ask you about the process of fact-checking that you undertake, which you address from about paragraph 64 of your statement. Before you include an incident in the report, what sort of information do you generally collect about the event?
Well, I want to know what happened, where it happened, the date, if there was a perpetrator, and anything about the victim, anything about the perpetrator. Not all incidents will have the same thing. So, for example, graffiti may not have a victim because it's a generic type of thing. So I try and collect as much information as I can about the incident, and what I actually write up in the report will only be the bare basics, because we don't need to put in a whole lot of the other information. It is there, if it's required for some reason. So it's, generally we just like to get as much information as I can about the incident.
And do you from time to time go back to the person who reported the event to check details?
Yes, I actually did that recently. Someone from about 6 months ago reported something, and I was going through some incidents, and it's like, hang on, I haven't got one particular detail. So I contacted the person, and what's this detail, so I obtained the information that I needed. So
and what about if you see an incident reported in the media? How do you go about confirming the details?
Well, in the past I have contacted some journalists. Can you provide, for example, an unpixelated image of the incident, of the graffiti, for example? But journalists are not that forthcoming with giving me information, so can't recall any journalists responding. But often within the media, so it's interesting because even the different types of newspapers we have, so I might collect, let's say, 5 different articles from 5 different newspapers on one particular incident, and so they'll all have different information in there, and so you'll end up with all the information that you need, basically.
And I think you said if it's something like visual, like graffiti, you generally try to obtain photographic evidence.
Yes.
Of that.
Yes, and often the earlier you do it from the media, the better, because later on they'll tend to pixelate it, because they'll pixelate swastikas. I've even seen the word Jewish in graffiti pixelated, but yeah, they have their ways.
And if you receive a report from, say, CSG or a Jewish state body, as you've outlined, do you independently fact check that report yourself, or do you rely on their processes?
No, because I know that they fact check them themselves, and also reports that I receive from CSGs or from the state bodies, if there is something in there that I want to clarify or it's not quite clear. So for example, one time CSG had an incident and it had 2 addresses, and it's like, well, is this 1 or 2 incidents? And they said, no, the both addresses are in there just for a geolocation. And it's right, so okay, so it was one incident, but yes, so I do question them quite a lot to obtain the, because I'm not there on the spot and I'm not writing up the incident, so so I do use a lot of questioning to clarify the incident, so I actually understand what it was and have all the correct information.
You say that you've obtained reports of incidents from multiple sources, sometimes from CSG, sometimes a direct report. Is there any risk of double counting incidents, and how do you guard against that risk?
Yes, so I'm well aware of that risk, and so basically there will be the incidents from CSGs and then all the other incidents that have come into me that I've checked. And so when I'm going through each incident for the final tally, I will double check and triple check to ensure that each incident is only counted once. And sometimes you may have a day or 2 out of the date. So you've really got to be onto it of, is this the same incident? And therefore I might end up, querying, the CSG or the state body or somewhere where I got it from for more information. But no, it's incredibly important that incidents are not doubled up.
In your statement, you go on to address the topic of underreporting. Based on your experience, do you have a view about whether there is underreporting of anti-Semitic incidents, and why do you hold that view?
Generally, yes, so there is massive underreporting. I can go on one of the Gen 17 surveys done, when was that, in 2017, I guess. For example, they had, 43, I think it's written in here, there was something like 43 physical attacks that were reported to them for their survey, and yet in that same 12-month period, the ECAJ report only had 12 incidents. So there's clearly a lot that we are missing. I also know, just in talking to people in the Jewish community, it's like they'll say such and such happened to me, and it's like, did you report it? And they say no, and it's like, well, you need to report it if because it's important to report incidents. So I know a lot of incidents aren't reported, and it's not just in the Jewish community, it's other communities as well, and it's also in communities overseas. So for example, there's studies that for example in France, very few French Jews no longer bother to report incidents, even if they're physical assault, because it is just so common over there. Is
that one of the studies you've referred to in your statement?
Not specifically, so I refer to the European Union one, the FRA, and one by an article this year. So, but I know, like years ago, something I'd seen in media or something about in the French situation.
Can you remember approximately when that was, when you read about that French study?
It probably would have been, because you've had a whole series of murders of Jews over the last sort of 20 years in France. So it may have been about 2012, 2015, something like that.
Thank you. From paragraph 91, you go on to make some observations about changes in anti-Semitism over time, and in particular at paragraph 95 you mention some new forms of anti-Semitic incidents that you observed since October 7 that you'd not previously encountered. Could you just describe those for us?
Yeah, so we had a lot of, because October 7, and even on that night of October 7 here in Australia, while the murders were still going on, planning their protest on the 9th of October, so for 2 days later. So clearly people were organising to protest Israel, to celebrate the murders, the massacres in Israel. And so some of those incidents included convoys, so lots of cars coming from the western suburbs, driving through the eastern suburbs, which is known that many Jewish residents live in the eastern suburbs, with Palestinian flags, and yelling out, F the Jews, as they're driving around. We also had quite a few arson attacks. So even though we've had arson attacks before in Australia in the early 1990s against 5 synagogues in Sydney, having the arson attacks again now at the Lewis's Continental Kitchen, a Dust Synagogue, so all of these, and attempted arson attacks, even Newtown Shore Synagogue, there was an attempted arson there as well. So they're all new incidents. So what we're getting is, apart from the normal incidents that we've had for the last, 20 years, now we're getting much more brazen, and much more confident coming out and not ashamed or worried about being considered anti-Semitic or being inciting violence against Jews.
And going back to the example of the pro-Palestinian protests you just mentioned, again, you're not suggesting that a pro-Palestinian protest in and of itself is necessarily anti-Semitic. It was the conduct of particular individuals in that particular protest.
Yeah, no,
that was anti-Semitic.
The protest itself is not anti-Semitic. People are allowed to protest for all sorts of reasons in this country, and that's what makes us a great democracy. But what happens is, at some of those protests, or at many of the pro-Palestine, anti-Israel protests, there are elements within that of people. There are also some of the speeches, some of the chants, some of the placards, and that's the anti-Semitic element within the protest. So it's not the protests themselves.
I understand. You conclude your statement by making some observations of how anti-Semitism has manifested in response to the work of the ECAJ, including your own work.
Mm-hmm.
At paragraph 121, you noted that the reaction of what you describe as some neo-Nazis to the publication of the Antisemitism Report from time to time. Could you just describe what you've observed in that regard?
Yeah, so it's interesting because on extremist sites such as Gab or Telegram, where a lot of the extremists gather and have accounts, and because they're platforms where free speech is allowed, you could say anything you like. And so often, they will know when the Antisemitism Report is coming out, so they watch it for years. End of November, the report's coming out. One year they complained because it was late, a couple of weeks late. But often it's like they'll go through it and they will screenshot and they will make fun of it, and some will say, look at those numbers, let's get them up. We're doing well, boys, but let's keep the momentum going. And I mean, it's not really a surprise that they, that's what they hate Jews, so it's not a surprise that they would be thinking and saying those kinds of things.
And you've also observed that there have been some caricatures of you posted
yes.
online as well.
Yes.
Do you mind if I just take you to an example of one of those? At the top of page 26 of your report.
Yes.
And I might just ask that be brought up on screen, please. Are you comfortable if I bring it up on
yes,
screen? All right.
It's on the internet. It's like.
All right, and I might just ask the operator to zoom in on the top half of that page. And could you show that on the live stream as well, please? Can I just ask you how you feel seeing this? Well, first of all, can I ask, how did this come to your attention?
Because I monitor these pages on Gab and Telegram, so I'll know the types of people. I mean, the other thing is they're all Australian citizens. They're all Australians or living here in Australia. So if I come across an account that I'm not sure is it English or American, so I don't do it. So these are also. So yeah, I'm looking at this guy's account, and I see this. And
sorry, could I just ask that be taken down now? Thank you. Please continue.
And so it's very much a sexualization. So you have what you call the merchant or the shlomo. So you have this Jewish caricature, and so this is the feminine version of it with the long curly hair.
And can I ask, is that the hand?
And the hands
is that
and the
characteristic of that
meme? Yes.
Right.
And the long fingernails. So basically, it's the feminine version of that. So then they've superimposed my face on it, and then added lipstick and eyeshadow to sexualize. And then if you look at the words, Julie simply desires to be filled with Aryan seed. She obsessed and considering taking out a restraining order against her. So it's very sexualized, and it was horrifying to see this, but then on the other hand, because I'm also the researcher, it's like, pull yourself together and capture it, you've got to capture this,
Then can I ask you about the one at the top of page 27, and I won't ask that this be put on the live stream, and it doesn't need to be brought up on the monitor, thank you. We'll just look at it in hard copy. That is an image that says, congratulations, executive, and at the bottom, 2019 Executive Council of Australian Jury. And someone's posted next to that image, thanks ECAJ, very cool, we promise to make 2020 even better. Where did you come across this? Was that on the Gab website as well?
Yeah, so that's on the Gab website as well, and one of the accounts that I have monitored over the years.
And so what's your interpretation of this image?
Well, we just put out the 2019 Antisemitism Report, and so they're very excited. They want the numbers to go up. They want to get more anti-Semitism. They do this image here, so you can see in the stereotypical Jew down the bottom there in the black, and so that was the one that's used to do the image of me. So that's the shlomo or the merchant meme.
And that's the
yes, that one.
Image.
Yes. So the scheming Jew with the big nose and the rotten teeth and the whatever else. and then it's interesting because the characters dancing up top, I can actually name most of them, because they're actually characters or people, accounts on Gab, and that's the avatars that they use or using at that time. So someone's put this together, and so we know that the Antisemitism Report, and as important as it is to put the Antisemitism Report together and make it public, I am aware that there are types of people who take great joy in the numbers of incidents, great joy in the anti-Semitism, and that's the way they are, and they're the people that we're dealing with at times.
Commissioner, I have no further questions.
I've just got a couple.
Yes.
You also say, Ms. Nathan, that on occasions you're aware that your reports are criticised on the basis that, quote, Zionist groups are falsifying anti-Semitism statistics.
Yes.
In response to that, is it the case that the reports that you prepare set out brief details of each incident?
Yes.
That is reported to the Executive Council?
Yes, yes.
And wherever it's a question of graffiti and someone has gone to the trouble to take a photograph, that's included?
Yes.
So that if a person is to say the Executive Council is falsifying anti-Semitism statistics, the short answer is go and read the report, and the report is available online on the Executive Council's website.
Yes.
And to the extent that there might be a grey area where where there's graffiti about Zionism, and some might argue, oh well, that's not anti-Semitic, and others might say yes it is. Well, the critic can look and judge for him or herself.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes.
And that's the point of putting in the incidents. I mean, in the report, so we try to be as transparent as we can, and there'll be explanations in the incidents chapter before the list of incidents, explaining what we count and why something's anti-Semitic and whatever. But even in some of these articles, for example, the one that you just cited, so they omitted the fact that the graffiti that they were complaining about, they omitted that it was on a synagogue. So I mean, that graffiti by itself, it wouldn't have been counted as anti-Semitic, but the fact that it was on a synagogue, which they omitted to say in the article to condemn the ECAJ report, and then they had a few other incidents, sort of stuff, items in there, and it's like I look through and it's like, so their criticisms are rather pathetic, actually.
And you told us that you've been a researcher initially with the council before being in your present position. Since 2010, have you been responsible for the preparation of these reports?
Since 2013. So I was employed as a researcher.
Yes.
And just the titles changed,
Yes.
and so, but basically from 2013 I took on the Antisemitism Reports, writing them, researching, documenting and writing them. Look, I even do the put in the images and the formatting and everything. It's all done by me.
Right.
Yes. So since 2013. And I'm continue doing the same. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your evidence. You are excused.
Thank you.